Hello, my name is David. Have you ever felt lost in a new place? Well, let me tell you about the time I got on the wrong bus and ended up on an unexpected adventure. Today, you will learn English through a simple and fun story about getting lost in a city. Pay attention to key phrases and expressions, and don't forget to turn on the subtitles. And repeat after me to improve your pronunciation. David had always loved exploring new cities, but this was his first time visiting this particular one. The streets were filled with people rushing to work, taxis honking, and vendors calling out their daily specials. The energy was exciting but also a little overwhelming. That morning, he planned to visit the city's famous art museum. He checked his phone, found the bus he needed, number 25, and walked to the nearest stop. A blue and white bus pulled up. Without double-checking the number, David hopped on, found a seat, and smiled. This is going to be a great day, he thought. As the bus moved, David looked out the window. The scenery slowly changed. Instead of tall buildings and busy sidewalks, he saw small shops and quiet streets. His excitement turned to confusion. He glanced up at the digital sign inside the bus. Bus 52. Oh no, he whispered. He was on the wrong bus. David's heart started beating faster. He quickly checked his phone again, hoping to find a way to fix his mistake. But there was no Wi-Fi, and his mobile data wasn't working. He took a deep breath and looked around. Maybe someone could help him. The bus slowed down and came to a stop. A few people got off, but David hesitated. Should I stay on and hope this bus takes me somewhere familiar? Or should I get off and figure it out from here? He thought. He decided to get off. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, a warm breeze brushed against his face. He looked around. This part of the city was much quieter than where he had started. Small cafes, local shops, and narrow streets surrounded him. It wasn't where he had planned to go, but it didn't seem too bad. David turned around and noticed another passenger stepping off the bus. A young man, maybe in his late 20s, with a backpack and a confused expression. He looked at his phone, then at the street signs, then back at his phone. David took a guess. Excuse me, did you also take the wrong bus? The man looked up and let out a small laugh. Yeah, I thought this was going downtown, but I guess I was wrong. I'm Mark, by the way. Nice to meet you, Mark. I'm David. I was trying to get to the museum, but now I have no idea where I am. Mark sighed. Same here. I was on my way to a historical site, but now I don't even know what neighborhood this is. David smiled. Well, at least I'm not the only one. Mark chuckled. Yeah, I guess that makes two of us. The two looked around, trying to find something familiar. The bus they had just left was already disappearing down the street. David noticed a small park nearby with a bench and a few people sitting. He turned to Mark. Maybe we should ask someone for directions. Mark nodded. Good idea. Let's find someone who looks like they know where they're going. With that, the two strangers, now partners in misadventure, walked toward the park, hoping to find a way back. David and Mark walked toward the small park, scanning the area for someone who might help them. The park had a few trees providing shade, a fountain in the center, and several benches occupied by locals enjoying the peaceful afternoon. Mark spotted an older man sitting on a bench, reading a newspaper. He wore a brown hat and a light blue shirt, looking relaxed as he turned the pages. "He looks like he knows this place well," Mark whispered. David nodded. "Let's ask him." They approached the man politely. David cleared his throat. "Excuse me, sir. Sorry to bother you, but we think we took the wrong bus. Do you know where we are?" The old man lowered his newspaper and smiled. "Ah, lost are you?" His voice was kind and gentle. Mark chuckled. "Yeah, you could say that." The man looked around thoughtfully. "Well, this is Brookdale, a quiet part of the city. Not many tourists come here." David and Mark exchanged glances. Neither of them had heard of Brookdale before. David scratched his head. "I was trying to get to the art museum downtown, and I was headed to the historical site," Mark added. The old man nodded. "Ah, I see. You both need to go back toward the city center. The best way is to take the number 25 bus." David's eyes widened. "Wait, the 25? That's the bus I was supposed to take in the first place." The old man chuckled. "Well, now you know why it's important to check before you get on a bus." Mark laughed. "Lesson learned." David smiled, feeling relieved. "Where can we find the 25 bus stop?" The man pointed down the street. "Just 2 blocks that way. You'll see a big blue sign. The bus comes every 15 minutes. Mark sighed with relief. "Thank you so much, sir." David nodded. "Yes, really, we appreciate it." The man waved his hand. "No problem. Enjoy your trip, and don't get lost again." David and Mark laughed as they turned to leave. As they walked toward the bus stop, Mark looked at David. "You know, this could have been a disaster, but honestly, I kind of enjoyed this little adventure." David grinned. "Me too. I guess getting lost isn't always a bad thing." They continued walking, feeling more confident now that they had directions. But would they actually make it to their destinations this time? David and Mark walked down the quiet street, following the old man's directions. The neighborhood had a relaxed charm, small cafes with handwritten menus on chalkboards, a bakery with the smell of fresh bread drifting through the air, and a bookstore with a cat lazily stretching in the window. Mark glanced around. "You know, I kind of like this place. Maybe getting lost wasn't so bad after all." David nodded. "Yeah, it's different from the city center. Feels more peaceful." After 2 blocks, they spotted the blue bus stop sign just as the old man had described. A few people were already waiting. David checked the schedule posted on the pole. "Looks like the next bus should be here in about 5 minutes." Mark sighed. "Good. I don't want to take the wrong one again." David smirked. "Double-checking this time?" Mark laughed. "Definitely." Soon, a bus approached in the distance. David squinted at the number. "Bus 25, he announced, relieved. The bus stopped, and the doors whooshed open. The two climbed aboard and found seats near the window. As the bus moved, David looked out, recognizing some of the buildings he had seen earlier that morning. He felt a sense of comfort knowing they were heading in the right direction. Mark turned to him. "So, after this adventure, do you think you'll be more careful with buses from now on?" David grinned. "Oh, absolutely. Lesson learned." The two laughed as the bus rolled on, taking them closer to their destinations. As the bus moved steadily toward the city center, David and Mark reflected on their unexpected adventure. Mark leaned back in his seat. "You know, today actually helped me practice my English." David raised an eyebrow. Really? How? Well, Mark said. I had to ask for directions, listen carefully, and understand the old man's instructions. It's different from studying in a classroom. David nodded. That's true. Real conversations are the best way to learn. You hear natural speech, different accents, and everyday phrases. Mark smiled. Exactly. Like when we asked, "Excuse me, sir, do you know where we are?" That's a simple but useful question. David chuckled. And the old man's response, "Lost, are you?" sounded so natural. Mark repeated the phrase with a thoughtful expression. Yeah, short but friendly. I should remember that. David grinned. And what about lesson learned? Mark laughed. Oh yeah, definitely a useful one. They continued discussing common phrases from their experience, practicing pronunciation and sentence structure. David looked at Mark. So, what's the biggest lesson you learned today? Mark smirked. Check the bus number before you get on. David burst out laughing. Good answer. The bus rolled on, the city skyline coming back into view. Their adventure was almost over, but the lessons would stay with them. As the bus approached the city center, David and Mark could see the familiar streets they had originally planned to visit. The tall buildings, busy sidewalks, and honking cars replaced the quiet charm of Brookdale. David looked at Mark. Looks like we finally made it back. Mark nodded. Yeah, but you know what? I kind of liked getting lost today. David smiled. Me too. Sometimes, the best experiences happen when things don't go as planned. The bus came to a stop, and the doors opened. David stood up. Well, this is my stop. Time to finally visit the art museum. Mark shook his hand. And I'm heading to the historical site. It was great meeting you, David. David grinned. You too, Mark. And hey, if we ever get lost again, at least we know how to ask for directions. Mark laughed. Lesson learned. David stepped off the bus and watched as it disappeared down the street. He took a deep breath, feeling grateful for the unexpected adventure. He had started the day with a simple plan, but by getting lost, he had discovered something even better. A new friend, a new place, and a new way to learn. Smiling to himself, he turned toward the museum, ready for the rest of his day.